Okay, here in this part, we are going to find out the application of SUVAT equations in studying or in solving the situations when we talk about return motion in a uniform gravitational field. So here we can take an example that if a ball is thrown upward at a velocity of 5 meters per second, how long does it take to return to ground? So what are we considering here? We are considering that a ball is thrown upward, means it will be an upward motion, the initial velocity. So if this is the ball and it is thrown vertically upward, it will travel this whole distance and it will reach a maximum height. This is maximum height. Okay. And when it reaches the maximum height, it will be returning to ground. So this is the initial velocity. We will divide this motion into two halves. This is the time required to complete this half motion to reach the maximum height. And this is the time required to reach from the maximum height to the ground. So the total time we need to calculate will be the sum of these separate time consumed by the ball. So how long does it take to return to ground means we need to calculate time period, and we are given with initial velocity, which is 5 meters per second. Here, as we know that whenever we consider an upward motion, then upward motion will be considered as a negative motion in a gravitational field because the object is moving against the force of gravity. And when we consider the downward motion, the object is along the force of gravity. So it is a positive motion. Here we will consider the acceleration due to gravity as positive. So this is the downward motion of the object, and this is the upward motion of the object. So whenever this ball is thrown upward with a velocity of 5 meters per second, so here u is 5 meters per second, and final velocity v becomes 0 meter per second. But when we consider this downward motion, the initial velocity will become 0 meter per second because it will stay in the air for a period of time, and it will return to the ground with an initial velocity of 0 meter per second, and its final velocity will again become 5 meter per second. Okay. So determine the time it takes to reach the maximum height. First, in the step 1, we need to determine the time period that it takes to reach its maximum height. That means we are considering the upward motion only. Okay. And to understand this upward motion of the object, what should we need to consider? We know that the initial velocity is 5 meters per second. Final velocity will be 0 meters per second. Acceleration due to gravity will be minus 10 meters per second square. And the time taken by the object is to be calculated. All right. And we also don't know about the height of the object. So what are the equations which we can utilize or we can consider? The first equation is this. Can we use this equation to find the time consumed by the ball to reach to its maximum height? So here the final velocity and the initial velocity will remain as the same, but it is the against motion, means the motion of the object is against the gravitational force. So A will be replaced with negative g, and this t will be replaced with capital T. Now, as we need to find out the time required to reach to its maximum height, we are making t as the subject. We have to rearrange the equation. This u will be subtracted and it will be divided by minus g. So here we are going to evaluate t is equal to v minus u over minus g. It means t can be calculated as the final velocity minus initial velocity divided by minus 10. which is the value of gravitational acceleration. So it becomes minus 5 over minus 10, which becomes 0.5 seconds. Got it? So the time consumed by the object to reach from this point to this point is 0.5 seconds. Similarly, we need to find out the time which takes to return to ground from its maximum height. Means now we are going to consider its backward motion, its downward motion again. Okay. So to consider its downward motion again, here we are dealing with this part. So the initial velocity will be considered as 0 meter per second. Final velocity will again be considered as 5 meter per second. And here the g will be positive 10 meter per second square. So we can use the same equation, v is equal to u plus a t. And here we are again changing it with capital A will be replaced with G and T will be considered as capital T. It will become against T. So making T as the subject, we can find V minus U over G. It will make V is the final velocity, minus U is the initial velocity, and G is 10. So T is equal to 5 over 10, which gives us 0.5 seconds. Okay. So add the times to get the total time of the ball when the ball remained in air. When we add the two times, as we know that the ball reached to its maximum height and it returned to ground. So the maximum height here, the time taken to reach to the maximum height is 0.5 seconds, and the time to reach to the ground position again is 0.5 seconds. So the total time can be calculated or determined by adding the two values which we have calculated, and it will get 1 second. We are getting the required result. Okay. So I hope it is clear with all of you, and you can further generate any requests if there are any confusions in any topic in physics. Thank you.